This is the Nedgroup Investments podcast, where we explore a variety of views and insights that investors care about.
Hello, I am Trevor Garvin from Nedgroup Investments Multi-Manager. This installment of your market and economic wrap is titled Tragic End to Steinhoff Saga. It has been a week filled with much news, both on the domestic and global front. Former Steinhoff CEO Marcus Jooste dies after being fined 485 million rand for publishing deceptive statements around the company's financial position between 2014 and 17. He was about to hand himself over to the Hawks on Friday last week, but tragically ended his life on the cliff paths of the seaside town of Hermanus. Jooste resigned from Steinhoff at the end of 2017, triggering a near collapse that wiped out 200 billion rand in pension fund money and other investments, as investors realized its financial statements were manipulated. For more than 2 weeks, thousands of South Africans continue to line up for water in Johannesburg, as an unprecedented collapse of its water system seems to be looming. While hot weather has shrunk reservoirs, crumbling infrastructure after decades of neglect is also largely to blame. As a result, Eskom says that load-shedding outages will have to be implemented to replenish low dam levels. South African investigators raided the home of National Assembly Speaker Mapisa Nkakula on Tuesday as part of a corruption inquiry against her. The operation by the National Prosecuting Authority was linked to a probe into alleged corruption during the Speaker's time as Defence Minister. She is suspected of receiving approximately 2.3 million rand in cash as bribes from a former military contractor. Finally, Vladimir Putin extended his rule of Russia after winning 87.3% of the vote. It is generally accepted that the elections were not free or fair, and he has managed to extend his presidency by another 6 years. Also in Russia, a horrific terror attack in a concert hall in Moscow over the weekend claimed 137 lives and more than 100 were injured. It was their worst terror attack in over 20 years, with the extremist group ISIS claiming responsibility. All 4 attackers have been detained. Turning to the markets, annual South African consumer price inflation rose to 5.6% in February from 5.3% in January, the second consecutive increase after 2 months of moderation at the end of 2023. This is the highest it's been since October last year, causing the rand to remain jittery and markets maintaining their hawkish tone for this week's meeting on rates by the South African Reserve Bank. It is expected that rates will be kept on hold, with rate cuts only coming in the second half of this year. Local equity markets were generally softer, with declines across all the major sub-indices, dragging the JSE FTSE All-Share Index lower over the course of last week. The Federal Reserve held steady on interest rates at 5.25% for the 5th straight meeting at its March meeting last week, and is sticking with its forecast for 3 interest rate cuts in 2024. During a news conference, Fed Chair Jerome Powell noted that a strong jobs market wouldn't deter the central bank from cutting rates in the future. UK inflation also fell to 3.4% from 4% in February, the lowest level it has been for the past 2.5 years, driven in part by a slowdown in the pace of food and restaurant price rises. This adds to the speculation that the Bank of England will only cut rates in the summer, as they decided last week that its key rate should remain unchanged, also at 5.25%. US markets closed mixed on Friday, with the Dow and S&P 500 losing ground, while the Nasdaq gained. Month to date, however, the benchmark indices are still performing well, with the Dow Jones up just over 1.2%, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq have gained 2.7 and 2.1% respectively. The S&P 500 index hit a new all-time high of 5,241 points. Oil remains steady, hovering at $85 per barrel, as the possibility of a further ceasefire in Gaza gained traction, with talks continuing in Qatar. It is hoped it may encourage the Houthis to allow oil tankers to pass through the Red Sea in the future. That brings us to the end of today's market wrap. It certainly has been another eventful past week. Till next time, with thanks, Trevor.
Nedgroup Collective Investments is an authorized collective investments scheme manager in terms of the Collective Investments Schemes Control Act. Nedgroup Investments does not provide advice on financial products and will only give you factual information. For further details on our funds and to view our terms and conditions, please visit nedgroupinvestments.co.za. Nedgroup Investments. See money differently.